First of all, before March 4th, 2012, I was a total atheist. I was thought that everyone here in this meeting was a kook. I total materialist. Had gone to Berkeley for a PhD, Cornell for a master's, and I had been working for over 20 years as a tax attorney with the U.S. Department of Treasury. So I was all the way on the extreme of materialism as you can get. And so then this energy being, and let me describe it to you, what it looked like. It was roughly, let me go back, like 2.5 feet wide by a foot and a half in height. Let me go a little bit, about a foot and a half in height. And it was multiple colors fluctuating, like a desert mirage, pure energy. It was rectangular shape, but it didn't have any external edges because it was pure energy. And it was transparent. You could see the living room wall behind it and our sofa. It was floating 4 feet off the ground. And then, and I called it a being, an intelligence, because it controlled my thoughts. And so after that experience, I found out my wife had missing time. I didn't know what that concept was. I realized at that time that this was a holographic projection that I was seeing. Very detailed explanation to that. And again, projected thoughts. And so I ran downstairs, grabbed my camera and video recorder, ran outside. Nothing was there. And this was a huge object. It was the size of a small football stadium. It was composed of hundreds of oblong streaks of light that were very, very long. And inside was all this white energy fluctuating. I used a 4-letter word, some better 4-letter word than this that you're showing me, because what you're showing me is garbage, and my friends don't believe you. So instantaneously, what I was watching totally disappeared, replaced by something totally different. Now what I was watching was about 100 stars that were large, and they weren't in the sky like a normal star would be. No, they were inside where that object was, in the location of it. And then they were blinking on and off like this, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And then one by one, they would take turns getting real big, like the size of the moon, and then getting real small. And then another one would do it real big and then real small. And then another one in a different location. So after like 10 minutes, there was no more explanation of what this was. Everyone knew that this was not man-made. And something new was put in front of you. So we're dealing with experiences of projection from an external reality. Just like you see a ghost, it might not be from your 3D physical reality, but you're having an external physical image projected in front of you. Anyway, so the very next day, I saw a video of NDEs. I went berserk. I had no idea what an NDE was. I then spent the whole night, listening to all these testimonies of NDEs. I wound up going to Amazon. I purchased like 20 books on Amazon, and it started 4 hours a day reading these NDE books. Then it went to 6 hours. Then it went to 8 hours. Then it went to 10 hours. Eventually, by December, which is 4 months later, I was 16 hours a day reading these NDE books and also books on the science of consciousness. So then my father then told me the most profound NDE story that I have ever read or ever heard on YouTube. He told me he was up there 20 to 30 years. And I said, what do you mean 20, 30 years? He said, that's how long it took God to show me all the good things I had done in my life and all the bad things I had done in my life, And he said, there is no such thing as hell. Why? Because God is pure love, And this is coming from, the Cuban Archie Bunker, And I'm like totally shocked, that this is coming out of my father's mouth. And he just went on and on and on. Time doesn't exist. We judge ourselves. God doesn't judge us, and it was that you need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. Now, when I was receiving that information, I had no idea what these terms, signified. It was only afterwards that I realized what these terms eventually meant to me. The relationship between us is we're all one. You know, God is the mind of God. We're all part of the mind of God. Us is the wholeness of the universal mind. Okay. The spirit world talks about how we as individuated units of consciousness, when we physically die in this 3D reality and return back to source, is that whole process of the spirit world. That's what how it was relayed to me. And then consciousness, what I was informed, is the actual fabric of our reality. It's the mechanism that makes all of this work. I was hyperventilating, you know, trying to adjust to what the hell just took place. When I went to work, I couldn't work. I came home early that day. And what it was that in her email, she said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I'm responding to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but it just appeared on my computer today." So then he began to tell me all the details of his work with the late Dr. John Mack, who was a professor at the Harvard Medical School. He had been working with UFO contact experiencers before he passed away, and that he also reached the hypothesis that this was conscious-based experiences. And that was the theory of Rudy Shields as well. And then he said, "Ray, what you got was a download of Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness, which is a multi-dimensional theory involving Edgar's theory of non-local consciousness, which we do have his magnum opus article on non-local consciousness in our book." And so he began to explain it and how it matched what I had experienced. Within 50 hours of my experience, I was at the home of Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And I won't go into all the details of what he told me, but I was there for more than 6 hours. And then subsequent to that, I was at his home more than 25 different times, because it was at his home that the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation got started. And just as a background to it, if anyone here can send me their email, and my email is info, I-N-F-O, at agreaterreality.com. So it's INFO at agreaterreality.com. I will send you various chapters from my first book, over 400 pages from my first book. And that'll have chapters 1 and 2, which is an analysis of our surveys. And also a chapter on medical healings. I'll send you an academic article that was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration as well, and several other chapters. So that research study was the world's first comprehensive academic research study on people that have seen UFOs and have had some type of contact with a non-human intelligence. And so we developed 3 surveys. The quantitative questions were 660 quantitative questions. The open-ended questions, we had 70 open-ended questions. And so we received for the quantitative portion over 4,350 responses from individuals from more than 125 countries. But our research findings totally contradict what's circulating in the field of ufology. These experiencers were having primarily paranormal experiences and not necessarily physical experience. Like in my case, I've called down 4 UFOs. So it was 4 physical UFO experiences. In terms of beings, I've only seen 1 being, and that's the being in my living room. But in terms of paranormal experiences, I had 4 years of paranormal experiences, from out-of-body experiences, from being taken to other realities, from getting information downloads, from seeing different, I wouldn't say physical beings, but different types of intelligence that was around me, for example, shadow beings, etc. So what we found out in terms of these individuals, that 80% of them were having out-of-body experiences. 80%, 8 out of 10 people. People that were getting telepathic information, 80% as well, telepathic information. people that were seeing deceased entities, discarnate spirits, ghost spirits, whatever you might want to call it, was 67%. Near-death experiences, 37% had near-death experiences. People that were brought to other realities, okay? That was 50%. Like in my case, 50% of these people were brought to other matrix-like realities. In terms of medical healings, we had 50% had medical healings. And roughly 1/3 of the members of our research team, including the professors, had miraculous medical healings. Another major topic that we want to explore were these experiences positive, negative, or neutral. And we asked 24 quantitative questions, because how you phrase a question, you'll get a different response. And also we had in our open-ended questions, we addressed that topic as well. And what we found was that initially 37% of these individuals viewed their experiences as negative, 37%. But the overwhelming majority of these people had numerous experiences afterwards. We were able to document that the more experiences you had, the more was your rate of positive experiences. So the people had, for example, 40% of the people had more than 20 experiences. These individuals, everyone saw it as positive. By the end, when they were taking our surveys, only 4%, that's it, only 4% viewed their experiences as negative. We duplicated exactly his research findings. That was both groups, both the NDE group and the UFO group, made radical transformations for the positive in their worldview. For example, people became much more spiritual, less religious, less materialistic, less egotistical, much more loving, okay? All of a sudden, ecology was important to them, okay? They became much more consciously aware. I could go on and on and on. So it's all the categories that you would want your spouse to be, you would want your children to be, you would have wanted your parents to be. It's these tremendous transformation for the positive. But you would expect those from the NDE group, but you wouldn't expect it from the UFO group. That's exactly what we found. People that initially viewed it from a negative perspective, but then towards the end of their life, it's like it's all love and light. It's all about spirituality. So this is the common thread of the 4,300 people that took our surveys. I take the opportunity of almost everyone that I meet. I asked them about these topics. For example, I had my blood work done 2 weeks ago. There were 2 phlebotomists there. I introduced the topic of NDEs, okay? One of them had an NDE, the other one, her husband had it. Then we talked about ghosts and spirits, okay? Immediately, one said, after my NDE, I began to see all these dead people. And then the other phlebotomist, that her husband had the NDE, said, I saw my dead mother. So I said, have either of you spoken to anyone else about these things? And they said, no, we've never spoken to anybody. And I said, have you ever spoken about it to each other? And they said, never. I said, well, you see how easy it is to open up your mouth and start talking about these things, you know? And what you realize is that we were in a hospital. I said, I bet you half the people in this hospital that are here right now have had these paranormal experiences. They've just never mentioned it to anyone else, okay? So it's like all the time I bring out these entry points of conversation, and you'd be surprised how many people respond to you. And they're really, I don't think there are any answers for it. The only thing I could say is that once you've had one, it opens up the door to others. And we're going to sell it like for, $19.99. So everyone can have 2,500 pages of materials, which is going to take them several years to read. But it's all about this new paradigm. And we're going to be making it, for less than 2 6-packs of beers, so like that, everyone can afford it. So that's my objective.